I knew my wife was planning something the day her doctor asked questions only a lawyer would write. He smiled gently, measured, professional. But the phrase, increasingly resistant to oversight, had nothing to do with medicine. My name is Damian Rowe, 44, founder and CEO of Rowe's Strategic Holdings. From the outside, I had it all. Penthouse overlooking Manhattan, boardroom power, quiet money that makes rooms go silent when you enter. From the inside, my wife Vivian had already started rewriting me as someone who needed to be removed. Before I tell you how she tried to take my company while pretending to protect me, welcome to Empire Downfall. If you love cold, calculated betrayals and watching arrogant schemes collapse in silence, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. This one hits different. Let's dive in. It started with concern. That's how the best knives are sharpened. Vivienne became softer, more attentive. She watched me with the tender eyes people reserve for someone they've already begun explaining away. Are you sleeping enough? Is the pressure getting to you? Maybe you should let others carry more of the load. The questions were too perfect, too rehearsed. Then her mother Helen joined the performance. At family dinners, Helen would sigh and say, "Men like Damian carry too much for too long," in that polished tone that sounded like sympathy but felt like preparation. I ignored it at first. My mistake. They weren't managing my stress. They were building a case. The first real warning came at a private wellness check Vivian insisted on. Dr. Nolan Pierce, expensive office, too quiet. He didn't ask about sleep or burnout. He asked if I had become suspicious of those closest to me, if I resisted help, if I was overly protective of financial control. I looked at him across the desk. Is this medicine or strategy? He smiled. That depends on how honest you're willing to be. That was the moment I understood. Someone had already drafted the narrative. My own wife was building a professional vocabulary for my removal. Not divorce, not scandal, a quiet competency review. Temporary delegation of authority. A polite erasure dressed up as care. I left without a scene. Vivian waited in the car, hand on my arm, voice soft. How did it go? I smiled. It was enlightening. Over the next days, the pieces became impossible to unsee. Seeded questions from board members. A director suddenly suggesting I take time if needed. Then, the email that was never meant for me. Subject, Temporary Competency Review Framework. It was clean, humane sounding, designed to strip my control while calling it protection. Vivian wasn't trying to leave me. She was trying to inherit my power while I was still breathing. I didn't confront her. That would have given her the emotional volatility she needed. Instead, I became impossible to narrate. I ran my own private cognitive assessment, secured every authority path, documented every concerned conversation, planted quiet evidence. Then I gave them exactly what they wanted. I grew quieter, withdrew from a few dinners, let them see me staring out the penthouse window while Helen rehearsed her sympathetic face behind me. They took the bait. Dr. Nolan requested a follow-up. Vivienne encouraged it eagerly. Helen asked about updating medical directives. The burial was almost complete. Thursday evening, Vivian called a small private meeting at home, just us, and Graham, one of our independent directors, for governance clarity. No pressure, she said. The penthouse was staged perfectly. Low lights, jazz in the background, decanter open. Graham arrived uncomfortable. Then Nolan. Then Vivian in cream silk, carrying the folder like a crown. She sat across from me and spoke with gentle precision. Damian, this is difficult. but people who love you are worried. She listed it all: the stress, the resistance, the changes in judgment. Then she slid the papers across the table. Voluntary, temporary delegation of authority. My company, my decisions, my life. Nolan added his clinical voice. Sometimes the strongest are the last to see when they need help. The room waited for me to break. Anger, disbelief, anything they could use. I stayed perfectly calm. Then I placed my own folder on the table. 3 documents. First, my independent cognitive assessment. Clean, dated yesterday, impossible to dispute. Second, a legal memo detailing the coordinated effort between spousal narrative, pre-scripted clinical questions, and conflicted influence. Third, a transcript. Just enough. Helen discussing timing. Vivian asking how many observed incidents they needed. Nolan's office confirming wording provided by external counsel tied to Helen's firm. Graham went still. Nolan's face drained of color. Vivian didn't touch the papers. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What is this?" I held her eyes. "The ending you didn't get to write." The silence was absolute. I leaned forward slightly. "You weren't protecting me, Vivian. You were trying to bury me politely, while I was still alive." That sentence cut deeper than any shout ever could. Graham stood and quietly called legal. Nolan excused himself with shaking hands. Helen was turned away at the door by security. The structure didn't explode. It simply collapsed in perfect silence. The next week moved like clockwork. Her access was revoked. The review died before it started. Nolan's office distanced itself. Helen's channels went dark. And me? I stayed. In my company, in my name, in my power. But I no longer looked at my wife the same way. What stayed with me wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how gently she tried to erase me while still calling it love. Some betrayals don't come with screaming. They come with soft voices and concerned eyes. And those are the ones that leave the deepest scars. Here's the lesson they never planned for. True power doesn't need to raise its voice. It simply refuses to be rewritten by those who never built it. Arrogance always believes it can control the narrative. But silence? Silence watches the pen, then takes it back. If you stayed until the end, you already know the golden rule. Never let someone who calls it care rewrite who you are. Drop a like if this one made you think. Subscribe for more stories where quiet preparation beats polished betrayal every single time. Tell me in the comments, have you ever sensed someone trying to erase you while smiling and calling it concern? This is Empire Downfall. I'll see you in the next one.